moving because it seems really slow. Like the weather is outside kind of gloomy and not so peppy and exciting. So for anybody who's able to join me this morning, welcome. Bring your coffee. Let's have some talk about business. So today, I want to talk about marketing. So again, welcome to Small Business Small Talk, where big ideas take shape. I think that's what I want to go with. I think. I'd love some feedback on, having that extra little tagline to go with this for Small Business Small Talk. But today, I want to share with you about my day yesterday. Did a marketing workshop. It went great. I had a handful of participants, which is my sweet spot. I don't need 50 in the room because we're able to really dive deep into areas that are important to those people. So we talked yesterday about marketing and all the overwhelm that goes with it. So where do you start? What all do you need to do? How do you manage your time on trying to get the things done for marketing? There was a lot of great conversation, and the stuff that I went over just quickly, I could be breaking these things down into day-long chunks just to get a person squared away on what they need for that marketing piece. But really, my biggest sticking point, if I could preach anything about marketing, it is get your foundation solid, because that foundation piece will set the tone for everything else that you do. And when I talk about foundation, I do mean a mission statement, a vision statement, a purpose statement. Work through all of your statements. Define who you are, what you're about, what you believe in. Get that definition in place. Then distill that into one core statement. That core statement also feeds into your brand positioning statement, because once you get it to the core statement, you are able to make decisions like that. Does it fit my core statement? Mine, for example, is I am the strategic guide for small business. If I'm going to work with a large corporation, that is not fitting into that core statement if I include small business in that statement. If it's executive coaching, I am the strategic guide, period. That's it. That's what I do. I am a strategic guide. Southwest Airlines had always been my favorite example when I explain this kind of stuff. Southwest Airlines would use, they are the low-cost airline. So think about it. If you're on a 4-hour flight with Southwest Airlines, which do you think you're going to get? A meal or peanuts? Think about it. Think. Pretty sure you would agree you're going to get peanuts, because that's the decision that they make to hold true to that core statement. The core statement also feeds into, how do you market that? How do you message yourself? How do you introduce yourself in a room? How do you create a tagline? How do you create all of this other stuff? That core statement is so important to set the tone for everything else in your marketing. I cannot emphasize it enough. Now, what kind of core statement do you need? Like, where should you go with this? I always push people to go watch Simon Sinek, The Golden Circle. For those of you who are familiar with this, he talks about messaging from your why you do the things you do. One of the reasons to do that is because, let's face it, when we're doing marketing stuff, getting people to purchase things, I purchase on an emotional decision. So do you. You go, oh, I want that. All right. And I see Josh has joined. Josh recently needs a new refrigerator. So let's face it, you need a refrigerator, right? But when he's ready to purchase, he's going to go, I want that one. So even though it's a need, he wants a specific kind. So how do these companies get him to want their thing? Well, it's all based in emotion. Most people, well, let me just quickly say, even though we purchase on emotion, a lot of people will instantly want it backed up with data. They want to make sure that their decision's good. So that's why they look at reviews. They do a lot of research. There's times whenever I purchase things, I overthink it, and I will research the bejeebies out of it for days before I actually hit the buy button. but I have put it on my wish list and I have researched it because I really want it, but I want to back myself up as to I'm going to get it. Versus my impulse buys, like, ooh, I really want that, I'm just going to get it. So it's all up in here. And marketers know that. That's why there's so much data out there nowadays. So how do you clear that clutter? How do you get in there? That's speaking from your why. If I can resonate with you at that level emotionally, quickly, I'm going to buddy up with you a lot faster. I want to be a part of whatever it is that you're doing. So whatever product that you're putting out next or whatever service, because you and I click on that level quickly, I'm game. And that's one of the benefits of having your why built into that core statement. So get your foundation solid. And let me give you another example. So business books, we'll talk about these too. If you are not feeding good, solid development type reading into your habits, do it. Whether that be looking at good articles because you don't want to spend time reading an actual book, that's fine too, but make sure it's good quality stuff that's going to help move you and your business forward. This is a really good one. It's one of my favorites because when I pick a book like this is Dan and Chip Heath, I'm making sure I can get it in the video here, Made to Stick. It is one of my absolute favorites because it helps you figure out how do you formulate your message so that it's memorable and it's usable by others, right? So there's 6 points in here on how to make your message stick. 1, simplicity. 2, unexpectedness. 3, concreteness. So made to stick. Simplest, and there's a success model. So they use an acronym of success. Simplicity, unexpectedness, concreteness, credibility, emotions, and stories. Stories work all over the place. So I'm going to read you a story really quick. I read fast. And about the simplicity aspect. Again, getting your why down to a core statement. Because if you know what you're about and you can say it quickly, everything else flows so much better. So this is about the Dunn Daily Record. Founded in 1950 by Hoover Adams. Adams was born with ink in his blood. He got his first byline by sending dispatches from his Boy Scout camp. By the time he was in high school, he was serving as a stringer, a freelance reporter for the Raleigh paper. After World War II, Adams became the editor of the Dunn Dispatch. Eventually, he grew restless at the Dispatch and decided to start his own paper, the Daily Record. Good for him. In 1978, after 28 years of head-to-head competition, anybody else got competition out there? The Dispatch finally gave up and sold out to him. Celebrations, right? Across the 55 years of his tenure as publisher, Adams has had a remarkably consistent editorial philosophy, his why. He believes that newspapers should be relentlessly local in their coverage. In fact, he's a zealot about community coverage. All of us know the main reason anybody reads a local newspaper is for local names and pictures. That's the one thing we can do better than anybody else. And that's the thing our readers can't get anywhere else. Always remember, the mayor of Angier and the mayor of Lillington are just as important to those towns as the mayor of New York is to his people. So let's be clear, Adams' focus on local coverage is not revolutionary sentiment. In fact, among publishers of small newspapers, it would be utterly uncontroversial. Yet it's easy enough to see that the idea has not become a reality at most papers. The average local newspaper is loaded with wire stories, analysis of pro sports teams, and spot photos with nary a person in sight. And yes, I just said nary because it's in here. In other words, finding the core isn't synonymous with communicating the core. Top management can know what the priorities are, but be completely ineffective in sharing and achieving those priorities. Adams has managed to find and share the core. So how did he do it? Bear with me. Adams found the core of his newspaper operations, local focus. Then he turned his attention to sharing his core message, making it stick with his staff. For the rest of this chapter, in fact, the rest of the book, we'll discuss ways to get core messages to stick. And we'll start by studying the way Adams has made his local focus message stick. While many publishers pay lip service to the value of local focus, Adams is an extremist about it. So step aside for a second, an extremist about it. So when you're solid about who you are and you know that, nobody's going to move it. That's solid. That's what I'm saying about solid foundation. Nobody else can move that. Okay, back to this. The fact is, a local newspaper can never get enough local names. I'd happily hire 2 more typesetters and add 2 more pages in every edition of each paper if we had the names to fill them up. He's willing to be boring for local focus. I'll bet that if the Daily Record reprinted the entire Dunn telephone directory tonight, half the people would sit down and check it to be sure their name was included. When somebody tells you, you don't want all those names, please assure them that's exactly what we want most of all. He gleefully exaggerates in order to emphasize the value of local focus, quoting a saying of a friend, Ralph Delano, who runs the local paper in Benson. If an atomic bomb fell on Raleigh, it wouldn't be news in Benson unless some of the debris and ashes fell on Benson. How focused are you with your message? Okay. In fact, that's why the Daily Record has been so successful. Adam replies, it's because of 3 things: names, names, and names. That is serious focus. What's going on here? Adams has found the core idea that he wants to communicate. The local focus is the key to his newspaper's success. That's step 1. Step 2 is to communicate the core to others. And he does that brilliantly. Look at the techniques he uses to communicate his seriousness about local focus. He uses an analogy, okay? Comparing the mayor of Angier to the mayor of New York. Little small town, massive city. He says he'd hire more typesetters if the reporters could generate enough names. This is forced prioritization. Local focus is more important than minimizing costs. Who you are and what you're about is more important than the cost it takes to do it. Struggle, I know, that's a whole nother subject. This is not a common sentiment among small town papers. He also speaks in clear, tangible language. What does he want? He wants names. He wants a lot of individual names in the newspaper every day. This idea is concrete enough. Remember, the number 3 of success is concreteness. This idea is concrete enough that everyone in the organization can comprehend and use it. Core statement. Is there any room for misunderstanding? Is there a staffer who won't understand what Adams means by names? Names, names, and names is a simple statement that is symbolic of a core truth. It's not just that names are helpful. In Adams' mind, names trump costs. Names trump well-written prose. Names trump nuclear explosions in neighboring communities. For 55 years since Adams founded the paper, his core value of community focus has helped hundreds of people at the paper in thousands of circumstances make good decisions. As a publisher, Adams has presided over close to 20,000 issues, and each of those issues involved countless decisions. Which stories do we cover? What's important in the stories? Which photos do we run? Which do we cut out to save space? Adams can't be personally involved in the vast majority of these hundreds of small decisions, but his employees don't suffer from decision paralysis because Adams' commander's intent is clear. Names, names, and names. Adams can't be everywhere, but by finding the core and communicating it clearly, he has made himself everywhere. That's the power of a sticky idea. And that is the basis of having your foundational statements solid for the rest of your marketing efforts. So I spent all of that time talking about that foundation and giving you the story of Adams with the Dunn paper to really hopefully get you to understand how important that is. Now, how do you do it? Well, that's when we sit down and we work through that, because the getting to those statements can be a pretty intensive process. Not gonna lie. Some people there's a rare person that can just make something up off the top of their head and it sound magnificent, makes sense, and we run with that. No, most of the time you need to carve out on your calendar specific strategic talk time. Really hone in on who you are, what you're about as a business. If you're focusing on this as a business, get your leadership in there. Get those people who are running it. Get a good solid mix of people who know what the business is about, because you want to get to the heart of it. And the heart includes belief set, your person, how are you personality wise? How's this business messaging it out? What kind of language are you using? What kind of tone are you using? What do you want it to look like, sound like, smell like, breathe like, whatever? Remember all of the senses. If you're if you're a restaurant retailer, the sizzle sells, literally. When you're and somebody hasn't made that decision on what they want to eat yet, guess what they're getting? They're getting what that person had, right? Presentation does matter. So go through the P's of the marketing. You got your price, place, product, promotion, all of those kinds of things. That's further down the road. But this core stuff, if you have a mission statement, is it less than a paragraph? Do you have your mission statement down to 2 sentences or less? Do you have the core statement to where a 3rd grader could be selling you? Ultimately, that's the goal. Like, you want that core statement to be so simple. Everyone, when I say everyone that comes in contact with you remembers it and can use it, because you want them to be able to repeat that. So when you have these core things that you're messaging out, that goes into everything you do for marketing. So let's think about everything you do for marketing. Marketing is the sum total of all communication that you have internally and externally. Everything you do with your employees counts. Everything you do outside with your vendors counts. It's not even just about getting that new client. It's everything we do is part of our marketing efforts, whether we realize it or not. That affects. All right. So waking up to the idea that everything we do has an effect on what I'm trying to do over here. So it's the cause and effect stuff that makes a difference. So if I'm threading that core into everything all the time, it's a lot easier to make those decisions. Back to the newspaper story. It's just easier to make the decisions if you know what's important. Like the most important thing, names, names, and names. So now that I know the most important thing, if it's doesn't fit that, it's got to go. I don't have to worry about it. That's not part of the plan. No is a complete sentence in that moment. So moving forward with your marketing, sure, we've got your online digital things, you've got social media, you've got the email aspect, you've got direct mail, you've got, some of you are able to do TV spots, some of you are able to do print ads, you've got a lot of billboards, everything to manage. And so the other thing that we talked about was, how do you manage all this in a day? Well, go back to the foundation. Part of that foundation includes, where do you want to go with things? Like, what kind of goals are you trying to hit? What are the objectives that you want? Do you want to increase an audience? Do you want to take over some market share? Do you want, what do you want to accomplish over here? Besides just revenue, we all want more money. We all want more. We talked about that last time. We all want more. What does your more look like? So once you define your more, then you can set those objectives. Your goals and activities feed into the objectives. That way you can determine, do you really need to be on Snapchat or not? Like, do you really need to put the business on Facebook on a consistent basis, or do you need to focus more on LinkedIn, or do you just stay on Instagram and Pinterest? Like, how do you determine all that? You need to do your foundational work. That's what I'm saying. So that way you can determine what activities you really need to do. Once you get those activities set that fuel into meeting those goals, that meet the objectives, that bring the vision to life, those activities can then be plopped on the calendar. Bucket out that time. Because if you don't put it on the calendar, it will not exist. It's easy to move. So set yourself a schedule and an appointment if you need to, and just be solid about that appointment of, I'm going to work on my social media for 20 minutes twice a day. That's it. I'm going to pop it open in the morning, be intentional about community management. It's called community management nowadays. Engaging with people on social media so that organically I get more points. engage with people twice a day so that I can go do other things and not feel obligated to have that instant reply. That's up here. That's a mindset thing. Like Pavlov's dog. If the bell rings, I have to go answer it. Don't do that. Set yourself some time specifically to work on those specific things. Get your foundation set. Know where you want to go. Set the objectives. Have the goals meet the objectives. Like this is all part of strategy. But I'm so passionate about get your foundation solid. So with that, I'm going to close off for the day, but I highly recommend this book, Made to Stick. Highly, highly, highly recommend it if you've not read it yet. It is a little bit of an older book. When I say older, it's not probably even 5 years old. Hang on. Pardon me while I'm looking it up, because again, it doesn't really matter because it's still very relevant stuff. The whole concepts work. It's 2008. So yeah, not that bad. So highly recommend that book. Go read Made to Stick. The concepts are solid and stay true. Go watch Simon Sinek, The Golden Circle. He'll talk to you about talking from the why. How you get to your why, that takes some work. I do have processes for that if you're interested, but it takes work to get to that why and the core statement. So with that, thanks guys for showing up, and I will have this replayed for a podcast and over on the YouTube channel. So please go subscribe to the YouTube channel, because quite frankly, I have a personal goal. I want to get subscribers over to the YouTube channel. Smallbusinesssmalltalk.com is the address for that. It'll take you straight over there. Go subscribe, and I will see you again soon. Please give me some feedback on good times and days to do this, because I'm thinking about doing it on a weeknight in the evening at the end of the day. If I do that, then gotta have a bourbon with this conversation instead of just coffee. So or we might do it multiple times in a week. Who knows? Love some feedback. So thanks for joining me today. Have a great weekend, you guys. Bye, Josh. Bye, Christina. I miss you, by the way. And I'll see you guys.